Hi everyone. In today's video, I'm going to demonstrate about one of the scope available in MuleSoft, until successful scope, followed by a demo. Okay. So let's see what is until successful scope. Until successful retries all the processes within it, including the one that failed, until all configured retries are exhausted. If a retry succeeds, the scope proceeds to the next component. If the final retry fails, until successful produces an error, right? Uh, so what are the most common processes that use until successful include dispatching to outbound endpoints, calling a remote web service that might have availability issues, executing a component method, for example, when executing on a Spring Bean that may depend on unreliable sources, using a subflow to re-execute several actions until they all succeed. So basically, if you are going to have an invocation to any target system, right? Through like HTTP request or a web service consumer or any other invocations, right? Uh, there is a chance that there can be network glitch, or there is a possibility that the backend is not stable, unreliable, and you might not, your application might not receive the response in the set time interval, right? So on that scenario, you can use this until successful scope, right? And you can retry calling the backend as many times as possible, depending on your business requirement or the SLA, and have your application try to reconnect to the backend and get the successful response back to complete your flow, right? So this is the most important use case and the most common use case where this scope has been utilized. So what happens when if we use this until successful scope within a transaction? So it blocks the thread. That means the thread used by the execution cannot be used to process any other request, while the until successful scope is performing the delay between retries. All right. So let's um, look at this with a demo. All right. So let's go to Studio. Let's create a project. I'm going to name it as until successful. Until success. Let me name it until success. Okay. Let's drag and drop a listener. Let's create. I'm going to create a dummy, a default HTTP request connector configuration, and I'm going to name it as the endpoint account. I'm going to name it as until success. Cool. All right, so I'm going to have a two loggers. Okay, one for start and another for end. Okay, let's name it as flow start, and another logger for flow end. Okay. I'm going to drag and drop until successful. So the scenario that I'm going to demonstrate today is, let's start with a negative scenario and followed by the positive scenario. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try read a file which is not available in the directory that I'm going to configure. Okay. So for that, I'm going to add a module, file module into my project. Okay, let's drag and drop a read component. Okay. And let's configure our directory. Okay, so I want to configure a directory which is not available. Okay, so ideally it should fail, right? I mean, fail automatically. If it is outside the scope, right, it will fail automatically once the flow reaches this component, right? Now, since this is within the until successful scope, it will retry, okay, based on the configuration, okay. Uh, right now, this is a default configuration, 5 retries for 60 seconds, okay. Now, let's reduce it, okay, to make it short. I'm going to give 3 and let's try for 5 seconds, okay. 5 seconds for enter for 3 maximum retries, okay. Let me save it. Let me deploy it, okay. It is going to come up. Let's wait for a minute. Okay, all right. My application got deployed. Let me call you from the REST client. HTTP. What did we name HTTP? Is the name that we have given? Yes. Okay. So I'm going to trigger a transaction. Okay. If you see, we notice the console, right? So my flow got started, and if you see, it is retrying. Okay, first attempt got exceeded, so now the second it's in second attempt, and then third attempt right now. So since it could not find a file, it says Mule retry exhausted, right? Um. So as you could notice, it retried 3 times. Okay, based on the configuration that we have given in the until successful scope, right? Now, what if I have a file, okay, present in this location, whatever we have configured, right? Let's create a folder section to whatever we have given, right? Name it as dummy, and what is the file name is test.txt. Okay. Let me create the same file test.txt. Let me add something. Okay, hello world, and save it. Okay. So closely note what's it here. Okay, my application is still running. Okay, I'm going to trigger one more time from Postman. I mean this client. You say this. My file got read successfully, and it's a 200 OK response. And even if you look at here, it's a flow start and flow end. Okay. All right. So this is one such scenario, right, where you can make sure all the processes within the scope is given some time. You know, even if there is some um, stability issues at the back end, right? Based on that, you can configure your retries and the time interval between the retries to accomplish, to make sure that the process within the scope is getting success to proceed with the other processes outside the component of until successful scope to have a flow getting processed successfully, right? Um, so if you want me to give one more example, right? Um, let me give you one. Okay, let's say I have to insert 50K records into Salesforce, right? If you notice, right, Salesforce will run the batch job internally. Okay, as soon as from Mule application we posted the 50K records into Salesforce using bulk way2 connector, right? So for every 10 records, it will create a job ID, right? And each job will take some time to get complete, right? So during the time, what we can do is we can make use of this until successful scope, and we can um, try to retrieve this job status. Okay, for certain, for certain number of retries, and within some in time interval, to make sure the job is getting completed at Salesforce. So which means the insertion is happening at Salesforce, to make sure the processes next to them, right, next to the Salesforce activity or the dependent activity, gets proceeded to complete the flow, right? So this is what it is about until successful scope. So if you like this video, please do subscribe. Until next time, thank you.